Okay, that one is good. Let's see the other one. Sending data is also now streaming. Cool. Let's double check how well this one goes. Error code. Fantastic. Cool. Let's check that through here. Let's go to my channel. Live. Cool. So it works. Cool, cool, cool. It's at least live, so that's what I'm looking for. This one works. Let's also go to this one to double check that it's live. Good to have both options open. Cool, did I not update the title? Okay. Let's reload this. We will see. Okay, one a little bit more delayed than the other, that's fine. Okay, I'm just going to go start. I have a chat open here, so we should be okay. Okay, so the way I am developing, ooh, I have a lot of dropped frames. I have half of my frames are dropped. Interesting. Okay, so hopefully that will sort itself out. If not, we'll figure something else out. I might just be able to upload the recording as well. So we should be okay. Yeah, my CPU is good. It's just my internet connection and might not have the best connection today. That's fine. We'll just keep going. I'm Hugo. Hugo Sonart. We're doing today a little bit of a test stream with YouTube and Kick together. I'm going to go over what I have so far for my tabletop role-playing game while I record. And hopefully we do it a little bit more streamlined. Hopefully we get through this in like an hour. Hopefully everything is clear within half an hour. And I don't go into too many tangents as it is. So let's dive into it. Here we go. This is, let's start at the beginning. The Adventure Awaits, the tabletop RPG. It's a working title. I will likely change it in the end, but for now, this is what I came up with, so we'll use it for now. It's a little bit more of a reality thing than it's a. It's less of a concept now. It feels more tangent, feels more grabbable. Anyway, let's dive into it. Tabletop RPGs in general are cooperative storytelling games, so the Adventure Awaits is no different in that. So if you play Dungeons and Dragons, the core, some of those elements will come back in the tabletop that I'm making. It is closer to a dice pool system, so depending on which version you play, I have a simple version and a complex version. We will get into that later on. It's a storytelling game where one player is the narrator or the game master or the dungeon master in D&D. One player kind of controls the world, running the scenes, setting challenges, running NPCs, kind of setting the stage for the rest of the players, which in this book we'll call adventurers. Um, the, each adventurer will be eager for adventure with their own goals in mind. Especially in the complex play, we dive into that deeper. In simple play, we kind of do group goals to make it more cohesive. How you play is the narrator will tell you what the scene looks like, a few interesting plot points, and you as a player get to decide what you want to do with those. So in this case, we have the we have you entering a town, and while you're entering the town, the narrator describes the wooden huts. There is some banging on metal in the distance where the smoking anvil stands, which looks to be like a little bit of a shop. There's a tavern to your left hand side, the Golden Boar, and there is a little bit of a squabble between two villagers to your right. You cannot really make out what they're saying from this distance, but the older lady seems to be in distress. And then it's up to you. What would you like to do with this information? So you could check out the anvil, the smoking anvil. You could check out the Golden Boar, or you could check out what the lady wants. Or you can just skip the town and just go into the wilderness altogether. There's many ways to play. Every campaign will play differently. Every group will play differently. But hopefully we will all enjoy the game, and that's the goal. Enjoy the game together. Tell a fun, engaging story as a group. So to do that, we have skills, and you use the simple rules will have 9 skills. The complex rules will have 100 or something skills. You will not use every single skill in the complex way of playing, because it will stack up onto the simple tier 1 skills. If there is something that is more complex to do that not everyone would be able to do it, the narrator can ask for a skill check, and a skill check will have one of 6 difficulties. 6 will be like the ultimate, like very complex task that you might be able to complete, and 1 is like most folk would be able to do it with some effort, but it also could still go wrong. And you roll an amount of dice that is equal to the skill level in the tier 1 skill. So if you are level 5 in adventuring, you roll 5 6-sided dice for simple play. And you count the amount of dice that are 4, 5, or 6. 4 and above is good. Those count as successes. And the successes you count towards the difficulty. So if your difficult level is 2, you need 2 successes on the dice to complete that difficulty. But simple play is a 50-50 per dice. You can level up until level 10 per skill. And for complex play, I can show you right here. Every tier 1 skill, which I don't know why it's not, well, I'll get to that later. Every tier 1 skill will have multiple tier 2 skills. And then the tier 2 skills have the descriptions. If you don't have the tier 2 skill of researching history, you can still research, because your base skill is research. If your base skill, your tier 1 skills always has 2, 3 or more dice. The lowest is 2, and only one skill will have 2 until you develop it, because that's what you are the least good at. So you can still do the research. If you're really good at researching, you might start with 5 dice in the research. And you can still roll up to 5 successes. It's very difficult to do because every dice is 50-50. But you can still do it. So there's still this, like, tier 1 skills are the base of the game. So for the playtest, we'll likely focus on the tier 1 skills first. And then maybe scale that part into a complex play with all the other skills. Like, I have 4 skills that are monster or enemy skills in the close combat. So biting, claws, the tail attack, and spikes all come into close combat. And let's see, we have a leveling table right here. So to have any tier 1 skill, let's just do this. Any tier 1 skill, to level 3, you need 17 learning points. And at the end of each session, which is a sitting of playing, you will get learning points. So tier 1, you are free until level 2. And then after level 2 to level 3, it requires 17. To level 4, 29. It just keeps counting upwards. So in total, you need 350 learning points in... no, I'm saying this wrong. Every time it resets to 0 and you need the new amount, I believe. Yeah, otherwise it's less. So every time you need a new amount. So reach 17, reset to 0, but go level up, require 29 points, reach 29 points, start at 0 for 47 points. And then you can level this one and tier 2 skills at the same time. Tier 2 skills are a little bit more specialized and only using complex play. The way tier 2 skills work is they replace the d6s, the 6-sided dice that you get from your tier 1 skill. So the normal dice, d6, with an 8-sided dice. So the chance of you rolling better on the dice is higher. And then once you reach level 10 with the tier 2 skill, you can get it into mastery, which will change the 8-sided die into a 12-sided die. And that increases your chances to 75% per roll of the die. So, and that then replaces a d8 die. So if you're level 10 in tier 2 and you're level 10 in tier 1, you have 10 dice of 10 8-sided dice. And if you then level up any level in here, it will replace per dice. So it requires this amount of points to reach that level of mastery. To unlock the mastery. So this one is actually be 0, sorry. So to reach level 1, you need 68 points after you completed tier 2. So that one is only after you complete it. You can level tier 2 skills above your tier 1 skills, but you wouldn't get any benefit from it necessarily, except for movement. Movement is a little bit of a special case. We will get down to movement in a bit. This is the amount of learning points per session. In simple play, I recommend playing either slow or normal, and in complex play, normal or fast to level up. These numbers will likely change still, so don't time me down those. Let's have a quick check. Yeah, I don't know which one is dropping the frames, so I would have to check after. However, we have a recording of this, so We're about 15 minutes in, which is a good time. We are about halfway-ish through. So next to my big skill list of 100 something skills, which might get a whole new thing added to it in new modules, we also have a weapon list. The names, like Viking sword, Arming sword, falchion, and the description are purely flavor at the moment. There will be a whole crafting book and a whole advanced combat book, most likely later on in development, as optional to add to your game. But as for right now, they are flavor. The only thing that matters is how you use them. So one-handed swords have a skill in close combat that is one-handed blades. So I will, hold on, let me change this to swords. Swords. And let's do that here as well. So one-handed and two-handed swords you will see at the top. Two-handed weapons, swords, and you have a little bit less options because historically there were less options for two-handed in this category. You have a whole lot of options for one-handed blades. You have access, roughly the same amount for one-handed and two-handed. You have less options in the two-handed maces and hammers, more options in the one-handed. And you will find some that are maybe lesser known. The list might not be entirely accurate. Let's just put this out there. I use Perplexity to help me with this. It might not be entirely accurate, and I might have switched two-handed and one-handed around sometimes because the descriptions weren't always clear and the references might also not be as good. We have one-handed spears, 3 options, two-handed spears, a couple more options. Halberds are also in the spear section. And then we have some flexible weapons, and we have ranged weapons, some options for throwing, bows and slings, and I will add crossbows later on as well. Some special weapons, which I will try to find more, because these are kind of interesting. And then armor, we have light, medium, and heavy armor. Also, for the defense, we have light, medium, and heavy, and dodge. Dodge is usually without armor. So there's different kinds of options for everyone. And then the most important thing about the weapons and armor is the quality they're made of. Poor quality will get 1 reroll, either offensively or defensively, depends on the item. If you have a poor quality weapon, you get 1 reroll until you have to sharpen it again. Defensive, you have 1 reroll in combat until you repair it. And masterwork, you get 10 rerolls. So that is per dice. So that is the slight difference there. So weapons are mostly cosmetic. It is just cool to see what kind of characters. I'm giving more descriptions to those items because I want you guys to be able to choose weapons that you think look cool and not feel you're penalized for grabbing a cool looking weapon. And if you then want to switch between weapons, as long as you have it's in the same skill group or you have leveled your tier 1 skills high enough, then it doesn't impact as much. So it's still pretty freeform in that regard. You have inventory space. I will grab a new character sheet in the next recording session that I do. You have new inventory space. You get a little bit more slots in the new inventory, I believe. I would have to count them. Might be double, might be up to 40 items. But I might add armor, that is 3 item slots. And a big weapon that is 2 item slots, small weapon 1 item slot. So I might play around with those a little bit because it's heavier. So, you know, we have to think about it. And then one of the core things that I've stole from Matthew Coville is quest cards. In this case, I kind of wanted to add in a little bit of a guide for the narrator and for the players to be like, hey, I want this to be a quest, or I want this to be a big quest, a small quest. Can we do that? And what kind of reward will that give me? And then have a visual tracker for that for the group and for the player itself. So big goals are campaign goals, or like similar to I want to buy a castle. That is a big ass goal. I want to rescue the cat. That is a small goal. I want to rescue the daughter of the blacksmith, so he will make me a good weapon. It's a relatively small goal. So it's kind of in perspective, like small goals you can play in 1, 2, or 3 sittings. And taking into account that a sitting is 1 to 4 hours of play, hopefully, if it's enjoyable enough. And then for every quest you get a reward according to the quest and danger level. You might be able to negotiate with the NPC on this. And then we get to the biggest part of the document, the most chapters at least. We get to combat. Combat is a little different than you're used to if you have played D&D. Apart from like the whole dice system that is different, right? In Dungeons and Dragons, you roll to hit a certain number. Here you roll against a roll. So you roll your attack against the enemy's defense. If you have more successes than their defensive roll, the amount of successes above his defense roll is what you do in damage. So I roll 4 successes for my attack, you roll 2 successes for your defense, I do 2 damage to you. It seems not like a huge number, because D&D has this big ass numbers where, oh yeah, I do 60 damage. Because the health pools are also very big. And here I keep the danger very high, because your health pool is 10 hit points. Does not increase. The only way to keep fighting after you lose 10 hit points is going into your death dice, which I will explain in a little bit. First, the movement system is very similar. Each square is 1.5 meter. In game, roughly 5 feet, same as in D&D. You just count the squares for a movement. So I do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 steps because my movement level allows me to. Each movement and each skill use is 1 action. You get 2 actions per turn. So an attack is an action, a movement is an action, 2 attacks are 2 actions, that kind of stuff. Should be relatively easy to do. Drawing a weapon doesn't require an action. Swapping a weapon might be a little bit more of a complex interaction because you want to put your weapon away and then draw a new weapon. That will take an action. Movement, in simple movement, tier 1 skill is movement for all movement. So your tier 1 skill is just 1-to-1, except for crawling, swimming, and climbing. Those movements are halved. For the complex rules, we are a little bit more complicated, a little bit more. You can choose not to use this rule if you play complex mostly, and then just use the simple rule for this one. Tier 1 will count as 1, like in a simple. However, tier 2 skill counts as 1.5 rounded upwards. So if you are level 6 in your tier 1 skill, level 1 in your tier 2 skill, you have, instead of 6 squares, you have 7 squares. And then if you get a level tier 2 again, you still have 7 squares, but then the one above is 8 squares. Because you replace the thing, it doesn't add to it. And then tier 2, and the mastery, which is if you complete the whole thing. If you complete the whole thing, you have 15 movement per action. And if you then do mastery, every 1.5 square will count as 2 squares instead. So in the end, if you've mastered your movement skill for running, you can move 20 squares per action. So you could move up to 40 squares, which is like 20 squares is like 30 meters in 6 seconds. And then roughly 6 seconds in armor with weapons drawn. It's not as easy to run as in other normal sports. And then for like it will double to like 60 meters if you take a double action to move, which is just with that is just tier 2 level. Yeah, that's just tier 2. It will be 20 to 20. No, that's mastery. Sorry, that is mastery. It's 60 squares max, which is decent. 40 squares max. Sorry, 40 squares, 60 meters. Got it. And then attack and defending. I explained already. Health and death. We have. Well, to play this, you need most of the dice of a normal set. I am putting down the D10 as your health dice. So that's what I mean with dice. The D10 is your health dice. So you don't have to erase on your character sheet if you play traditionally as much. You start at 10. Anytime you take damage, you will roll it down the amount of damage you take until you reach 1. If you reach 1, you move it to your death counter, and every turn it will roll up 1 until you reach 10. When you reach 10, you're dead. I do this because the number on the dice indicates your endurance that you need to roll if you want to keep fighting. And endurance is also a defensive skill. So for tier 1, it would be a defense check against the number of your wounds on the death dice. So if you are just transferred into death, you only need 1 success to keep fighting. If you are there ready for a little bit, like at level 3, you need 3 successes to keep fighting, otherwise you go down and you are unconscious. The downside of keep fighting is enemies will still see you as a threat, so they will attack you still. And any damage you take will move that death dice up. So if you take a hit of 2, it moves up to 2. Start of your next turn goes up to another 1. So if you are starting at 1, you hit an enemy, they hit you back for a good hit. You go to 3. Next time you roll it up to 4, and then you make your endurance check as one of your actions. So you go faster to the death. It's a choice you can make. You can always choose to not do an endurance check and you go unconscious. Sometimes in life or death situations, the one player that pushed through might be the hero of that combat. So it's a risky thing to do, but it might also be just what you needed to do to keep the rest of your friend group alive, the adventuring party alive. And we also have healing. So healing works a little bit different. You heal slowly. That's it. You just heal very slowly. If the right ingredients are nearby, you can make an adventuring herbalism skill. Herbalism is a tier 2. For every 2 successes you roll, you get 1 health back. or give 1 health to another player. The second way to heal is resting. If you rest in the wilderness, not in the town, you rest for 1 health per night. If you rest in a basic room in a local tavern, it is for 2. Maybe if you pay more, you get 3 per night. Another way is visiting a healer in town. Those will be more expensive, but they can do up to 3 to 5 points per night. And if you go unconscious, the death timer, well, if you're stabilized, the death timer stops where it is, and that will have to heal first before you go up into your health. Then we have an example of an enemy. I have changed this a little bit in the Book of Foes, which I will also be bringing out when I actually publish this. But this will be the basic of it, for sure. We have a name of the monster. In this case, it's a bandit with a health of 6. His motivation to fight you is to get wealth. He will try to rob you, rob adventurers and travelers. The greater goal is to enjoy that wealth they generate from robbing people. This means that they might flee when their health gets too low or things look dire. They will just try to run. And this one is part of the Crow's Nest, which is a small bandit organization that I made up for the playtest. His attacks consist of a scimitar of poor quality, so he gets a 1 reroll, and his skill level in close combat is 3, so he gets 3d6. His bow also poor quality, but his skill level with the bow is 2, so 1 reroll. Dodging, 2d6, level 2. Senses is very high, because he wants to hear when something is approaching and ambush them instead. And then his bandaging is 3, so he can heal himself or stabilize himself or someone else, and then try to get those people to safety. In the complex one, we have some extra dice formulas, so 2d6 plus 1d8, so it's 2 skill in one-handed blades, and the same is for bandaging as well. Then this is old character sheet, so we will not take a look at this today. But you see that the health and death thing here, and then the nice skills here. That is roughly what it remains to be. And then character name, I have flaws, personality trait below this, but we will get to that at a later stage. When you create your adventurer, you are asked to create your adventurer according to some questions to get a deeper understanding for what kind of character you want to play. Like, where did your character grow up? How was it growing up for them? Did they struggle with anything growing up? This is kind of to give yourself an idea of what was his childhood like and why did he become an adventurer. And kind of what he values, and kind of get an idea of what kind of character you're trying to create before you do anything else. And then at the end, you're all playing humans for now, unless I will add a book of races and that kind of stuff later on to play playable character basis or something, I will call it. You will get to pick 1 weapon of common quality, 3 gear items, and clothing.